Hellz, yeah. It started out as a joke, actually. Because I had a name that, so many other people had. It was Knox, which was short for Equinox from back in the day or whatever. So I just shortened it to Knox. And then there was like Mickey Knox, Fort Knox, Knox. It was just so many Knox. It was just like, I was on the phone with a friend of mine one day, and I was just like, I'm just call myself something like Hellz, yeah. And she was like, that might work. Then I thought about it. When a female tell you something, you like, think about it a little bit more. And,
as you should.
Yeah. Then it actually stuck. And when I thought about it, it really fit because, I wanted everything I did to be a statement. And Hellz Yeah is not a name; it's a statement. So, and it's a statement that everybody can relate to. Who hasn't said a form of hell yeah? Or Hellz yeah, or Hellz yes, or I don't, you know what I mean? Like somebody has said that. Everybody has said that term at one point in their life. So it just fit and it stuck. So now when people see me, you can't say my name like Hellz yeah. You gotta say it with your chest. You gotta, Hellz yeah, what's up? You know what I mean? So I love it. It works for me. My music, I believe, makes a statement, and nobody else has.
No, I haven't heard it.
Nobody's had a name that's been like a statement like that I can think of. Names have been names.
Right.
You know what I mean? So my name being a statement is just kind of different. Production by just reaching out to certain cats. If I like the cat, hey, listen, I got beats.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I just started. I was working in the studio as a recording engineer, and they had production equipment there. So when there was no sessions going on, I would just play around with the MP, play around with the Triton, and make beats the best way I knew how. And this is where I say I'm literally self-taught because I had nobody there to sit there and tell me, like, listen, do this or do that. So in a way, I don't know the rules when it comes to production. So I produced for a lot of independent cats. Some of the major things I've done, I did a remix for Akon and Lil Wayne called I'm So Paid.
Okay.
Did a remix for Ghostface, Redman, and Ludacris called Future Thugs. Avant and the Yin Yang Twins. Then Boom Boom, I think the name of that record.
Hey, Boom.
And then more up to date, Sean Price died last year, and I was working with Rock, his partner, and I actually produced the record called Streets Want Blood, which is his tribute to him. I felt like that's right now that's like the most important record I've done in my career. To do a tribute record to an artist that was so respected, you know what I mean, who was pretty much an icon, especially from Brooklyn, you know what I mean? So, that's probably my most important record to date. Now I'm working with Sauce Money, Sauce and I are working on joints. Graph, working with Graph. Actually, I am the newest member of his crew, Team Bang Dope Gang.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So we made that official today.
Oh, nice. Okay, that's exclusive.
He heard me as an artist, and he was feeling me. He already liked me as a producer and an engineer because I mix all his stuff now. I mixed down his single Trap Phone Ringing.
Right.
I mixed down the next single that's coming out. And all the freestyles that he does comes right out of here, out of Hell's Kitchen. So it's a great thing, to be able to be in the company of these artists who were artists that I had studied at one point. I love Sauce Money, you know what I mean? So, and when I heard Graph, and I wasn't into, us Brooklyn cats, we kind of funny when it comes to cats from other boroughs. We kind of.
Where he from? Queens, right?
Huh?
He Queens?
Yeah, he's Queens.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So, but when I heard him, it was just like, dang, he was just an undeniable dope MC. So, I appreciated his craft, I appreciated his work, and I met him at the Fleet DJ conference.
Oh, yeah?
It's funny because I came down there specifically to meet him.
I didn't know he was even at the last one.
Yeah. He performed and all that. And we crossed paths in the club, and I grabbed him like, "Yo, we gotta work." You know, and shortly after that, we just started working. You know, and now, you know, like I said, I'm part of the crew. You know, I'm looking to do production with a few other cats as well. You know,
like who?
Loaded Lux. Me and him been speaking back and forth. And you know, I want to do projects with cats. I don't want to do like one-offs. I think one-offs in this day and age is kind of like, it does no justice for the artist or the producer. You know what I mean? It's like we got to develop a working situation. You know
when you say one-off, just for everybody,
just doing one
single,
doing one song. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And it may not even be a single.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like you just doing the track for a cat, and then it winds up on a mixtape or something like that, and it just gets lost. You know, as many beats, as hard drives and gigabytes that I have with music and beats, like I still don't want it wasted. You know, I want it to make a mark of its own. You know, like the Streets Want Blood. Like that's a historic record. You know what I mean? And I'm the only one who did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He's like, I feel good.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and that was a beat that I just had. You know, it was a dope beat, but it was a beat I just had. You know what I mean? I played a few beats, and he was like, "That's the one." You know, and he stayed in the studio. We was in the studio from like 12 in the morning, 12 to midnight to like 8 o'clock in the morning working on that record. You know, and then I stayed up for 2 more days mixing and mastering the record because I needed it to sound right. Like, you know, I'm team no sleep when it's time to
I hear it.
done. You know what I mean? I don't play games when it comes to that.
When it comes to, you know, your production, mixing and mastering, it sounds like it's something you enjoy. That's a part of the process that you really enjoy.
Yeah, you know, it's just like, it's the same feeling like that when people who are building homes feel when the home is complete. It's that same gratification, like, wow, this is a finished piece of work. It's a painter, like you're a painter, you're a craftsman,
designer, whatever, right?
You know what I mean? You're a carpenter, whatever it is that you are, where you have to build. You know, that gratification that you get when you sit back and say, damn, I did that. You know, that's the same feeling I get when, you know, when I hear Graf performing a record at South by Southwest or at Santos, at SOBs, you know, and I get Instagram messages like, yo, Graf just performed the joint sound crazy. You know, that's my energy in the record. So how many people am I touching with my energy, with my vibrations from mixing down this record? People are knowing me without knowing me. What makes them unique is the fact that they have more control over their music because they use more musicians. You know, so they have, even though they may you know, start out with a sample, they'll call the musician in to play the sample over.
Okay.
You know, and then the musician, whether it's a keyboard player or a trumpet player, horn player, whatever, you know, they may add their own little flair to it, but it's still reminiscent of the sample. You know,
do you think? Oh, go ahead.
and I think they just have a deeper respect or a deeper
Appreciation,
foundation. You know what I mean? For musicianship. Where over here we don't, you know, when you think of New York, you don't think about musicians.
Rappers.
You think about the artists. You know what I mean? And then you think about the producers. But when you think about the producers, you know, you're thinking about the Pete Rocks, the Premiers, the Large Professors, the Q-Tips. You know, you're thinking of cats like that who are all sample producers. You know, none of these guys really played anything. So, you know, the fact that the West Coast was able to, you know, really change the sound and make their sound so clean and crisp, you know, I don't even like talking about Dr. Dre because, like, that's cheating. You know, it's cheating to talk about Dr. Dre. Like, he's like the god of sound. You know what I mean? Like, his ear is just different from everybody else's. You know, he's just so far beyond everybody else that it's not even fair to even say, yeah, look up to Dr. Dre. Like, why wouldn't you? You know what I mean? So, I think you know that him being the icon of the West when it comes to production. A lot of the other producers who come from out there kind of following that pattern. So a lot of them are actual musicians, you know, who play and you know who get busy.
I think about Kendrick Lamar's sound and a lot of the younger producers.
Yes.
So when you say that, you know, thinking about those younger producers who probably mimic Dre. Right. All right. So let's talk about your album.
Yay!
And we got it.
Don't stand too close, you might start feeling your flesh fry.